Are you a fan of Martini Window? Why not like, subscribe, or buy us a coffee at martiniwindow.com or the link in our description. Now enjoy the show. Hey everybody, I'm Kevin.
And I'm Kayla.
We love movies.
And talking about them.
This is the Martini Window, and it is a wonderful episode we have out today, isn't it, Kayla?
It is.
Oh my. So this is a wonderful movie that I'm really excited that we're going to talk about because the director is one of my favorite directors of all time, Sidney Lumet. But before we start talking about that, let's talk about the illustrious, wonderful actor, guest, part of the cast of Family Law on CW, on Global. Please give it up for Mr. Ryan Lino. Ryan, thank you so much for coming on to our show.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, you guys. I'm excited to do this.
So tell our audience a little about yourself.
Sure. This is always a tough question, but I am an actor. I'm Filipino, so performing is like a huge part of our culture. So I've always been performing ever since I could remember. Like, we have a huge appreciation for music, dance, and art. So I've been acting since I was a little kid, and I was in all the school plays. I was a huge theater nerd. And I had my first agent when I was 13 or 14 years old. And I took a long break from acting actually because I wanted to pursue a 9-to-5 career, but clearly that wasn't for me. And acting was really my passion. And so I jumped back into it and I've been pursuing it full time ever since. And thankfully I was blessed with Family Law where I got to meet Kevin. And yeah, it's been great ever since.
And if for anybody listening, that's it. That's the highlight. That's the takeaway. He met me.
Absolutely. I mean, really, that is what it boils down to, right? Doing this podcast is why we're all here.
I will say that was genuinely one of my favorite seasons of television I've worked on was Family Law season 4.
I'm always happy when you came home from work.
That's good to hear. That we didn't completely traumatize him from all our shenanigans.
Oh, it was wonderful. Just a wonderful time.
Yeah.
So, Ryan, let's talk about our movie today, 12 Angry Men, the classic film from United Artists, Henry Fonda's only producing credit in his entire career. The feature directorial debut of Sidney Lumet, who went on to create such classics as Dog Day Afternoon. And Ryan, let's talk about this. What brings this movie onto our platform on this beautiful digital day?
Well, I guess the TLDR version is that it's probably my favorite movie, full stop. And it's interesting because when I first saw this film, it was when I was in Capilano. I did 2 years of film school to kind of educate myself on the other aspects of filmmaking. So I took classes on screenwriting and directing and editing and just to get a taste of every other aspect of the filmmaking process. And 12 Angry Men was one of the films that we were assigned to write about. In many ways, this movie is kind of the antithesis to everything I like in a movie because this might be a very hot take and I hope I don't get canceled for this, but I don't love black and white movies. And, so going into it, I had very low expectations of enjoying it. It's about 12 white men. It's not really something I've ever been something I relate to or understand. I went into it very cautious, but after watching it, I was genuinely blown away about how flawless this movie, in many ways, I think given the time it was from and also just, the place that it was in at that time, I confidently say it's a perfect movie in many ways. It's a masterclass in acting and writing. And there's nothing wrong I could say about this movie. I just absolutely love every aspect of it and could talk about it back and front. So I'm excited to kind of dive into it with you guys.
Everything about it just feels so purposeful, just like to the
Exactly.
minute character actions in the background. When we were rewatching this, I've seen the 1997 version, but I'd never seen this version. I thought it was so, so I'd never seen the original. And I love that in most of the shots, somebody was moving in the background. There was always something going on, even if it was like a static shot.
Totally. It's almost like it is adapted from a play script. Like Reginald Rose adapted that from his play script. And it is like watching a live theater production on screen in many ways. Because like you said, there's always like action going on. There's different pockets of people talking in the corner and the camera seamlessly kind of just moves in through that space. So you feel like you're in that room with them. Yeah, it's like you said, everything is very purposeful in terms of like the camera shots, just like little moments. Every piece of dialogue is crucial to the case that they're solving. And so, I think it's in terms of writing. I mean, as an actor, I feel like screenplay is something that you kind of gravitate towards when you're watching a movie. And this is, yeah, it's probably like a perfect. I've said this many times already, but it's perfect screenplay in my books.
Well, one thing I'm going to add to that front too, with what Kayla's talking about, I am a big lover of a certain era of filmmakers that kind of came, like Sidney Lumet. He had done some television before this, but one thing about Sidney Lumet is that he had a reputation up until the day he died. And actually, his last movie was Before the Devil Knows You're Dead back in 2007, before he passed away.
Yeah.
And one hell of a swan song to go out on, because he kind of went through a little bit of a recognized slump in the tail end of his career. And then
Totally.
yeah, and then suddenly, I like a lot of his kind of more slump movies anyway. He had a really fun courtroom drama with Vin Diesel at one point. One thing he's always been known for was being the ultimate actor's director. His collaboration with actors was legendary. There's people who worked with him time and time and time again because they had a level of control over their character and over their performance that they didn't get with many other directors. Sidney Lumet was a big believer in the people in the world. I heard this somewhere. I don't remember where. So whoever's listening to me, don't, like Ryan said, don't cancel me if I can't find the quote somewhere. But it's he said something along the lines of like, let the people create the world. And we see that actually kind of echoed in some other filmmakers' takes. Like, I don't know if a little off topic, but The Player by Robert Altman starts with a very famous oneer going through the Hollywood lot, and you're using the conversations of all the overlapping people to kind of create that world and understand where you're at. And that's kind of the method Sidney Lumet lived and died by. So what you're talking about with your background actors, and I mean, 12 Angry Men doesn't necessarily have any background actors, but the people in the background at all times have a story going on, have something they're doing, because that's creating our world.
You feel like
atmosphere.
you're seeing a movie, but then there's an entirely different movie going on down the hall.
The story's not the building, it's the people in the building, what they're going through. So that creates your life. And I think when you see that, it truly highlights the first time you're seeing Henry Fonda's character of juror number 7, Davis. Because here you are, everyone's got little bits of uncoordinated casuality, chaos, what have you going on. And then there's a stark white suited man smoking in the distance to introduce the one man who's going to stand up front.
And I mean, even as they introduce the other jurors, you can tell what their personalities are like just by how they're sitting on a table. Like, one guy's not sitting on his chair, he's just sitting like on the table, and you can really start to see their characters just with how they immediately are when you walk into the room with any dialogue.
I think.
Yeah, the salesman.
Like, I feel it's so impressive that with a cast where no one has any assigned names aside from them, and you find out it's Davis and McCardle, 8 and 9. But the fact that you can distinguish each juror based on how they talk, is like little nuances that they have, or like you said, how they're sitting in the courtroom or in the table, little subtleties like that, I think is what makes it so impressive, because it is hard to juggle a cast of 12 people at all times and making sure that everyone kind of plays a crucial role in this story without making it. And that's the thing. I think in a lot of ensemble movies, you find where the characters will have little moments per sequence where they'd be like, okay, it's this person's time to shine, this person's time to shine. But here, everyone is always playing at all fronts, and they're all utilized in some way. And kind of going back to, like, you are able to really tell who each juror is and where they're coming from and what their prejudice and biases are based on just how very small things that the writer and director just kind of inserts in there.
And one thing I want to point out too is that these are characteristics that Sidney Lumet would go on to factor into his other movies. Like some films they directed. One of my favorites I mentioned earlier was Dog Day Afternoon, which carries on. Yeah, amazing movie, and it carries on a good focus on Pacino the whole time while maintaining somewhat of an ensemble piece. But he also did, and I want to point this out, he did the original Murder on the Orient Express in 1974.
Oh yeah,
So-
another one of my favorites. That's another
Exactly.
all-star ensemble cast.
Exactly. And this is a guy who just has it in his hand to say, this is a cast of incredibly talented actors at the stage and screen, and I am not going to interfere with their process.
He balances them really well. Like, there's no point in the movie where I go, why is that guy standing in a corner doing nothing? Even when the
Absolutely.
loudmouth isn't talking, he's sitting there sulking, or he's actively doing other things, and it's just very well balanced.
Yeah. So we all know that this was originally adapted from a play, but did we know that this was actually the second time he had adapted it for the screen?
Oh, I didn't know
Correct.
that.
Yes, it started as a 1953 teleplay that he originally wrote as a play and then had the opportunity to do it as a teleplay. So he had to write it down to 55 minutes. And then later on, it was Henry Fonda who actually had acquired the script or read the story and wanted to adapt it back into a feature film through United Artists at the time. So
Oh,
budget of the movie was
interesting.
$330,000 in that era.
Filmed in some ridiculous amount of time.
21 days.
That's
That's
crazy.
wild.
It really
And
is. And you go
is the
on.
teleplay accessible like anywhere? Like I would love to be able to see the original version that Sydney did.
I believe
You said this is the
Yeah.
second time it's been adapted on
Yeah.
like but Sydney wasn't the first one. I
at first,
understood
no, sorry.
that.
Westinghouse Studio One. They did a teleplay. It was directed by Franklin Schaffner at the time. But
Oh,
it was the same script, but condensed down that you would end up seeing in the movie.
Yeah, it was the same
interesting.
writer as well, Reginald Rosé. I think he also wrote it after being a juror on a manslaughter case and just seeing the people who wanted to get out of there and just
Yeah.
didn't care.
It doesn't surprise me about this too. When you see the history of the Fonda's activism, like Jane Fonda is famously an activist.
Thanks for that fun tidbit. I'm gonna try to find that OG screen version. I would love to take a look. I haven't even seen the 1997 version, so I should probably check that one out as well.
The 97 one's a lot of fun. It's directed by William Friedkin, and it updates a lot of the kind of references of the era for a more modern time. And that's actually one
Totally.
thing that's been very fun about this story is that 12 Angry Men might actually be one of the most parodied and referenced movies in history. Almost like any single show, not any single show, but very often, your little one-off shows like Simpsons, Family Guy, Big Bang Theory, like your little kind of very family-based one-off shows will often do these sorts of 12 Angry Men plotlines.
It'll be like a bottle episode or something.
Yeah.
I'll be like a 12 Angry Men bottle episode.
Yeah, I remember my first introduction to this movie was the show Pepper Ann on Disney when I was a kid. They did a version of 12 Angry Men about a guy spitting in a security camera.
Yeah, I wonder if this movie, like, I don't know what the first ever instance of a bottle episode was in a sitcom or any TV series, but I wonder if this film played a huge role in making that a lot more accessible or interesting for people to test out in their writing and their experimentation. Because this really showed that you can do a lot with just a room full of people and just staying there and just letting the conversation be the driving force. And I'm also curious, like, what would this film look like in this era as well? Like, I wonder if they were to adapt that, which I don't know if I would be all for, because I'm not a huge fan of sometimes continuing to remake and reboot everything. But if there were a modern day 12 Angry Men, I wonder how that would look like as well.
Well, it's also one of those premises that's been remade in different countries in different ways with different references. Because in reality, it's one of those things that the principal idea of one person standing alone against the rest when somebody's life is on the line, that is
Absolutely.
timeless. That's universal, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those fascinating movies because you can remake this so many times and you never have to do it as a period piece.
Didn't you say that the Mexican version of this was about the cartel?
Yeah, there was one version in like the Mexico, I think it was Mexico, Colombia or something like that, where they did a version of this. But in that version, the one guy was trying to get them to convict because they were going to let him off because they were afraid that he was like cartel or something.
Interesting. So did in that version, did they go outside of the whole conviction conversation, or was it still similar to this film? It was all like kind of contained in that.
It was officially a remake, but they
Okay.
changed. Yeah, like these are official remakes, but they changed certain things and updated certain things because the framework is pretty universal. Kayla and I were talking about this after we watched it because we just watched 12 Angry Men yesterday, I
Yep.
believe, right? And we were talking about this afterwards. I've seen the movie before, by the way, but
I
don't
would hope
worry,
so.
everyone.
I
Don't
mean- I
take
mean-
don't
I
take
mean-
my movie lover card.
No, I was gonna
Uh,
say you're a huge film buff. I would have been surprised if this was your first time.
No,
diving into it.
like I said, Sidney Lumet is like one of my favorite directors. right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and so, but what I was gonna say though is we were just watching it yesterday, and one thing I had in mind was if you were to remake it nowadays, I think the way to do it would be instead of a murder, it would be like a Me Too situation.
That would be
Oh,
interesting.
interesting. That would be that would take a lot of, I think it would be such a controversial type of topic that I think, people.
I don't think I'm the person to make that movie.
Yeah.
My cis white ass is not the one to make that movie.
No, but still, I think that would be a very powerful thing to navigate. I mean, there is an upcoming movie now, I think, about the Me Too movement after the hunt with like Julia Roberts, and I think it's not the same as this movie in terms of they're not trying to convict someone necessarily, but I think it is about that layered conversation of what like perception versus the reality of people and like how people's biases play into it. So I think, yeah, I think it would be a very powerful thing to and very complicated thing to navigate for people.
Yeah. And it's fascinating what you're talking about too, because one thing I did really love about this movie, just it's a very focused script in the sense that Kayla, you were saying earlier, like you never actually like that the guys, the verdict's not guilty, but you don't actually know if he did it or not.
And I like that it's not really about whether he did it. It was the investigation that got done thorough. No, it wasn't.
Exactly.
They clearly missed a lot of things. The justice system didn't work in this case.
Yeah.
It's really just putting it almost feels like there's this one guy who's the only person who's really seeing that the system can fail or be flawed or, have corrupt things going on. I believe one of the jurors says, but the police did it, it must be fine. Like, or the equivalent of that. Like, if the
Mm.
police said that, it must have been done properly. And, you know,
For sure. Like it really opens up the conversation of the due diligence in the justice system and whether I think that's where it really explores the avenue that I think during that at a time and place too where people just kind of use their biases to just make everything like a open and shut case and like not everything is black. And I think realizing that not everything is black and white, I think that's a very powerful thing to do at that generation as well.
Yeah, especially considering when this movie came out. But this is before the civil rights movement. Yeah, it was before the civil rights movement. So yeah, that era is definitely something else. And I think that's probably, in my mind, that is probably part of the big reason why Henry Fonda got himself financially involved in this.
yeah, I can imagine some places of that era not being happy with
Well,
the.
full budget for this movie nowadays and think, well, $330,000 is, it's a lot of money back then. But in reality, even in 1950s, it's still a fucking movie. Then you're still making it with some of the biggest names of the big screen at the time.
Yeah.
Like these people are still getting paid. My understanding, what I read is that even in that era, that was low enough that they actually all took deferred payment.
Oh, yeah, I did read that. Though.
When you consider that, you consider what the message and the script these people were trying to put out there. I feel like there's a lot more as to why they went behind this script than I think they let on. And I think the performances in this movie, some of them feel really sincere to what they're trying to prove.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a favorite juror for like a special one that kind of you have a soft place in your heart for aside obviously juror 8 is the whole pure example of like I think he's listed in a lot of lists as one of the best heroes in film cinema, but I'm curious, is there another juror that you particularly gravitate to or really find very compelling to watch?
First, I'll ask Kayla what yours is.
I love the old man.
Yeah, yeah.
Just
Joseph
the
Sweeney.
second person. Just when he's seeing that someone else is standing up for it, and he's like, "No, I'm gonna hear you out. You're actually willing to put your actions behind your questions."
Yeah.
And he has a great monologue about being an older individual and kind of being ignored by the public and not being viewed as any sort of worth. And I think that was a great scene in terms of why people sometimes lie or try to pump up their side of the story to make a difference and grab attention. And I think that was a really cool dive into what the mind of an older individual, especially if they're lonely. And I thought that was a really well written part of the script.
It's a very human motive that, a jury of that era might not have considered
Yeah.
to be part of it, because like in that era, men were men and they didn't have feelings. And, especially if he's an older man, people probably didn't consider that he would be sad or lonely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And to answer your question in my end, Ryan, I would actually go with juror number 4, Mr.
Ooh, I
E.G.
love
Marshall.
him.
My reasoning is that somebody might look at this movie and see that he's on what might be seen as the wrong side of this argument. But I actually completely disagree because I think he is on his side and he's on the side of saying he's guilty big. And his devotion to the facts to me are as actually admirable as juror number 8, Davis's devotion to the idea that we have to look beyond what we perceive as the facts.
Yeah.
And everybody else is malleable in that courtroom. And the one guy is so passionate about juror number 3 is so passionate about it. And it's just because he's, estranged from his son. He's got other personal shit going on. But what I like about E.G. Marshall's character with juror number 4 and the way he plays him is he's stoic the whole time in his stance that He heard the facts, he treats them as facts, he treats them as evidence, and he's basing it on the logical decision. Something about that I love because it's, like I said, the other side of that spectrum, but for the same admirable loyalty to the due process as what juror number eight's trying to say.
And
Yeah,
when the context of the facts changes, and he also changes his mind.
Yeah.
Sorry,
no, I
I
found it.
interrupted you there.
Oh, no, not at all. No. So I completely agree with the fact that Kevin, what you said about how he is in a way an antagonist to juror A, but at the very same time, they do kind of operate very similarly because they are just trying to go through the process like in a well established and like due process at the end of the day. And I think it was really cool to see two people butting heads that kind of approach it from two sides of the opinion, but at the same time, they do technically see each other eye to eye more so than juror 3 would, because he has his own kind of personal weight to why he feels that type of way. And so, yeah, juror 4, I found very compelling as well. He was one of my favorites because I think he's not your typical type of antagonist that is, there for the hero because like he's trying to, he has his own personal motivations. I think he wants to get to the right answer just as much as, but he just disagrees given the facts that are presented.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the thing that works for me with him compared to anybody, especially the damn salesman who you just want to punch in the face the whole time. Holy crap. Incredible casting throughout this whole movie.
I know. You can go through the entire list of each actor here. They each have their moments to shine, but they all kind of, even if you don't know any of their names, you can genuinely tell which part in the whole process each of them play. It's incredible.
I mean, that's the beauty about that era of like Henry Fonda was a leading man for his era, but for the rest of them, though, very character actor types, very like working man actors, like sort of looks to them. I mean, we don't really, I've said before on the show that we don't really seem to have like the same level of character actors nowadays that we used to have. You know what I mean? Like Gene Hackman's a great example of what I'm talking about. Rest of his soul. But Gene Hackman, back in the 70s, like he was a very character actor, like working man lead. You know what I mean? He didn't look like the hot tamales you see on the on screen these days. He didn't look like what we see now as a leading man, but we used to have a lot more faith in having them kind of run our stories. And so here we are going back to like 12 Angry Men. First and foremost, I think if you were to remake this movie these days, they would have somebody like Channing Tatum playing Henry Fonda's character. You know what I mean? I don't see a world where they look for like an everyman type.
See, I would have gone with like Michael Fassbender.
Oh, I agree with Kayla there. I feel like that would have been a more appropriate choice in terms of what they would try to get at. But unless they were going for a more comedic route, then Channing might be a better.
I'm just saying what I think would happen. I'm not saying what should happen here.
That would actually be a fun thought experiment, is to like, who would you cast now, given the actors in our generation here? Like, who would be the 12? Should that be something we do? Or like, would that be too complicated?
Why the hell not? All right. So Michael Fassbender, I know you were saying juror number 8's role. Man, you know who I would actually have in the role of the xenophobe, the racist dude?
Juror number 3. I disagree. I'd have Danny DeVito.
Danny DeVito? But I want to like Danny DeVito.
Or he could be the sports guy.
Oh yeah, the salesman.
Kind of
he's probably good enough to be like the old man at this point.
That's true.
But it's funny that you mentioned like Channing. I think realistically though, if they were to do a dream cast of like who's in now, I think they would probably steer a bit younger. Like, wouldn't they want to put in like all the Timothy Chalamets and Austin Butlers of the world in here?
Totally be Chalamet or Butler, wouldn't it? It would totally be Austin Butler playing Davis.
Exactly. Yeah, let's do something different from his wheelhouse.
Well, frankly, if we really want to go that direction, we could just do it all with Muppets.
Oh, we sometimes play a Muppets casting game. So pick any movie and you're casting the Muppets, but you have one human actor. What Muppets are the characters and who's the human?
Yeah, that's... yeah, so Muppets 12 Angry Men, I would keep Henry Fonda. But
yeah, I feel like you have to keep juror 8 as the one human.
What I will say about this movie is, one thing I know it's particularly known for is Sidney Lumet's direction and directorial choices in this is actually well regarded and quite often talked about in film schools. He starts very close or like higher, slightly looking down, wide angles, more people in
Oh,
frame.
yes.
And as the movie goes on, as we start getting more and more defeated one by one, we start actually seeing, especially in the end, when the tensions
It's
are high,
claustrophobic.
very claustrophobic. He starts using telephoto lenses and longer lenses, tight framing, and he starts framing slightly up more.
I was watching this as a costumer. I'm like, whoever did the continuity on that sweat, I applaud them.
Yeah, that must have been so frustrating to have to keep in mind the whole time. It's like, who's sweating at this point?
It would be a lot, but I'm sure, people doing that old school back then probably had a lot less help than we do. Like, we've got sync on set and we've got other apps. They were
Really?
going all by photos. This would have been extra hard.
You're telling me they did 12 Angry Men without the viewer app? Impossible.
I think another cool thing that I noticed they did is the camera shot progression is very effective. And I think it was cool how speaking of sweat and temperature, it was cool that at the point where the jurors agree on 6-6, like they're divided half and half. That's when the rainstorm starts and the fan starts working again, because there is that sense of relief that's provided to the audience. You kind of break the heat a bit and the tension. It's just a very cool, effective choice of
when you're watching it. You know what I mean? I do know exactly what you're talking about. You kind of have that sense of like, okay, take a breath.
Yeah.
Which it's fascinating how to make that work. But I mean, the camera movements help and the camera placement helps. And you get certain scenes like when you get the bigot there just yelling about how they don't respect life like we do, blah, blah, blah. And you have that just beautifully framed shot of him just chaotically spewing his nonsense in the middle while everyone slowly starts turning their back to him.
Yeah.
Basically surrounded by nobody, which is a wonderful metaphor that I like that they're doing there. But it's when you see stuff like that, and it's so driven by the performances in this movie to actually guide your attention and guide where you're at. I think that's why Lumet's framing devices that he uses in this and his lens choices actually really do such a good job, because they really are there to highlight the actor's performance.
And he does add other things in the scenes. One thing I noticed while watching the movie Juror number 3, when he puts his jacket in the closet, it's the only jacket that's the opposite way to the others. Every other jacket is facing the correct way, and his is backwards, and they actually highlight that in the last shot where Juror number 8 gives him his jacket
on him for him.
when he puts his jacket on him for him.
I didn't catch that. That's a very great observation. I'll have to look back at it when I do my 100th rewatch of this film.
Kayla has a keen eye when it comes to costume significance.
Well, I do costumes professionally, so I have to have that eye for set.
Totally. Like you're
It's like
programmed
watching
already
movies.
like that.
I'm like,
I'm
oh
sure-
yeah.
Is there anything else in terms of the costuming that you found particularly, I guess, informative to their character, or even just how the plot progresses?
Well, you absolutely see where each character is emotionally by the state of their undress and like when they're pulling their ties, like not just the sweat stains. You can see who's unraveling faster by who's like the most at least put together, basically.
Totally.
I found that was very, very interesting to watch in this film.
Kind of like the way that they were like taking off their coats, putting them back on. Like,
And number 8 is the only person who, when he goes to the bathroom, he actually hangs up his jacket properly, like following the rules of society.
yeah. His suit's also like angelic white compared to everybody else's.
Yes, that was on purpose.
Oh, really, Kayla?
Yeah, speaking of suits too, I did love Juror 7's get up. I mean, he was a very frustrating character. Watching the salesman, sports baseball guy, but
Oh man, but
his
the
whole
hat,
getup
tweed
is
jacket.
yeah, it's beautiful. I was like, yeah, that guy has some swag.
Like the pattern texture on his jacket and the hat match so well. It was like there was so much texture on it for like a black and white film. It was like really that extra level.
Chaotic, but in the best way. Like
Yeah.
it kind of really just adds the depth and texture, like you said.
It feels more lived in when you have like different textures, I think, in your outfit. To me, it feels more 3D than just, becoming a flat image.
Which, I mean, I think what they were doing that time, that's actually such a great way to kind of design character, build character, and kind of like really bring to life some of these people without having to say much. Because, in a movie that's only an hour and a half long, you really don't have necessarily all the time in the world to establish these characters.
You really don't.
Yeah, like we just finished writing an ensemble piece actually recently, and that is one thing I will say is having to balance that many characters at once is no simple feat. So I do definitely commend that. Which brings me to my next point I wanted to talk about, which was actually the script in this movie. So Ryan, you were talking about when you first were in film school, you saw this, you said that the performance, the writing, that all captivated you. Do you want to kind of dive into that a little?
Absolutely. I think I genuinely love how the use of the dialogue is crucial to you as a viewer solving the case with them. You're almost like the 13th juror in many ways because I think as you hear the back and forth of the case being presented, you are trying to figure out what's going on at the same time as the rest of the jurors. I think that's really effective in such a dialogue heavy film where you do have to maintain the attention of the audience in all the information that they're processing because the writing is structured in a way where you are invited to want to know the next missing piece. And I found that really cool to dissect. Like, I don't know, like I feel like every new evidence that was presented, it kind of would they would do something in the dialogue where you'd almost want to recall back to what has already been hashed out and kind of using that to inform the new evidence that's been presented. And so, yeah, it felt like a real life fair play type of case that was happening, which I found really cool.
It's funny because before we did this episode, you were saying that your movie was either going to be this or Knives Out. And what's funny about that is that in both those cases, it was a movie where it's exactly that. The audience is kind of left there to start putting the pieces together, listen to the case. Like you're almost acting as the jury to watching the jury discuss this in 12 Angry Men.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I do find that kind of interesting. And so I do wonder, is there something to do with that mystery or, whodunit aspect that you found kind of draws you to this?
Yeah, I'm a huge whodunit like crime junkie, and even though this wouldn't be the classic type of, I wouldn't call this like a typical murder. I mean, it's not really a murder mystery in many ways, but I think just yeah, just going through that journey along with the characters, I find very compelling, and also it's interesting because Juror 8 actually does something where I do watch this film, like, at least once a year. I do, like, a rewatch because I just love this movie, and I've noticed that Juror 8 does this thing where he doesn't really present a lot of key or powerful arguments in terms of evidence, but he does this thing where he allows the other jurors to express their thoughts and kind of go at it with each other, and in turn that kind of allows them to contradict each other. Like there are a couple times where juror 3 will say something in retaliation to juror 8, and he would catch himself kind of saying exactly what juror 8 was trying to point out.
Where he says he'll kill him.
Exactly,
And
like, that's a perfect example, like, where he's like, "Oh, you can't take that seriously," and then he gets riled up and ends up saying, "I'm gonna kill you," and then jury's like, "Oh, you don't really mean you'll actually kill me," to kind of prove his point that the person on trial might have just been saying it, out of expression. Or there's even one instance where I have such a bad recall when it comes to, like, actual dialogue, but moments where he'll egg on the jurors to relay exactly what he's been just trying to invite them to have the conversation. I think that's the point of juror 8 is not to prove them necessarily wrong. It's just to invite them to have that conversation and think about, oh, maybe we were too quick to make this type of judgment and maybe we should kind of just talk about it more.
like he's kind of leading them to question their own conclusions. Like I especially love the part where he points out the guy's indents from his glasses.
Oh, yes.
And then they remember that the lady who saw him do it also had glasses on, and would she have even had time to know it's him? So,
Yeah, and I
like,
think
that
that's
was
the
just
one yeah, that's the one piece that I feel like convinces Juror 4 to change his vote, because I think at that point he realized, yeah, there's a sliver of doubt now.
there's like, yeah, there's plausible deniability at least.
Really, that's all he was ever trying to prove is that there's reasonable doubt because he wasn't even trying to prove the guy didn't do it. He was saying not guilty just because this guy's going to literally get the electric chair. He's going to die. It's not being in jail. And then, oh, no, he didn't do it. Okay, let him out. So I like that he's kind of keeping that in mind because he even says several times throughout the movie, maybe I'm setting a guilty man free. Who knows? And I like that it's not about whether or not he's actually guilty. It's about making sure they've done their due diligence in case he's not guilty.
It's
And
just
I think
making sure the
actually
system works.
yeah, exactly. They kind of just yeah, they're making sure that they're doing their job as jurors. Yeah, like really dissect the facts. And speaking of, the whole concept of whether we know if he's actually guilty or not. And one of my favorite lines in the film is from Juror 6, who I actually feel doesn't get a lot of love because I feel like people view this juror as very underutilized. It's the guy played by Edward Binns. He has my favorite line of the film, though. I think he says, supposing you talk us all out of this and the guy really did knife his father. And I think that was and I think that's the one moment where Henry Fonda's character actually steps back and internalizes that and thinks about, oh, that's a good point. Like, what if I do try to talk everyone out of voting him guilty, and the truth is he actually did kill his father. And I think that's really what it comes down to. The film is you will really never know if he's the culprit or not. And I think that's like sometimes the most powerful and like scary thing about these types of decisions is that we'll never know the actual answer. And I just found that line very haunting in many ways.
And what's crazy about that too is like it's haunting because when you think about is that not basically every jury? Well, like
absolutely.
You think about the fact that it's these random people who might have their own agendas, their own reasons, and all that, deciding the fate of somebody else. In this case, it was a life or death situation.
Absolutely. That actually makes like the xenophobia aspect of it so much more powerful. And you realize that juror number 3 is just there because he doesn't like other races.
Yeah, I mean, well, he's, nowadays that would get him off a jury right away, but I guess this was the 1950s.
This was a lot more normal in that era. Whenever I watch older movies, I always watch it through the lens of the times are not the same as they are now.
I mean, this is, again, before the Civil Rights Movement.
Yeah.
So when you consider that, like, you look at something like a Supreme Court Justice, Sonia Sotomayor, had mentioned that apparently the one guy in this movie who waxed poetic about democracy, he was an immigrant in the movie. I can't remember which juror that was. It was juror number 11.
11.
Yeah, juror number 11. She said that he was actually her inspiration against law. Was something to do with his discussion about democracy and due process. However, she went on to say that despite that and how inspiring it is, she says no court in the world should have allowed that not guilty verdict to go based on the evidence. She was saying it's like every single bit that you see in that movie can be labeled circumstantial.
Like even him bringing the knife, like the second copy of the knife, I was like, that would not be allowed in an actual jury room.
That in the movie, they said you can't buy a knife.
That's illegal. So I broke the law.
No, but I forgive them for that because I mean you got to do what works for the art.
Oh, absolutely, and it's like it's not even. They're not even trying to say that they're like sitting there for like a week at a jury. They're making it very clear they're only going to be there till like 7 or 8. Like,
exactly.
Sorry. Go on.
No, it's fun. No. I was gonna say it's very like unrealistic in many ways, but I think you kind of give them a bit of grace for that, and just given the circumstances.
But one thing I do love though is I'm a bit of a sucker of courtroom movies.
Oh yeah,
I would consider 12 Angry Men kind of falls under that category. Because in the same era as this happened, there was also Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
I haven't seen that one.
I haven't seen that one either.
Jimmy Stewart, classic of the era. There was this whole notion at the time that I felt permeated through a lot of media that one honest person in the courtroom can change someone's life, or one honest person can fight for what's right. And unfortunately, I think every single day we're seeing right now that's not the case. But at the time, that was a very, very popular notion in movies. And it's kind of nice to see from this perspective that there was even an era I found where somebody would be willing to fight for this or what they allowed. And maybe this is what was supposed to be seen as the inspiration for other people at the time. I mean, consider the fact that the original Rosé, the writer of this, went on to also be a writer of the Twilight Zone throughout the 1960s and 1970s.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, right? Like he was writing episodes of the Twilight Zone and some of the more political ones at that.
Because like any dialogue from 12 Angry Men, I can completely see in the Twilight Zone episode.
Oh man, right? Were you ever a fan of Twilight Zone, Ryan?
No, I didn't. Yeah, I never got into it. I've only heard great things, but my knowledge of Twilight Zone's quite limited.
Okay, fair enough. Highly recommend it. But yeah, Reginald Rosé.
Is there one I should like start off with in terms of like a specific episode?
If I only had more time.
If I only had more time. Okay, I will put that on the list.
Yeah.
With the glasses.
Yeah. The beautiful thing about Twilight Zone is that the episodes are all like half hour long.
Yeah, and it's all like kind of standalone. Right?
They're all standalone. And they're all written by some of the finest thriller and sci-fi writers in that era, including Reginald Rosé, who wrote 12 Angry Men. And what I love about this is that it has that same sort of political leaning and same sort of early view of somebody saying, hey, the prejudice that we're kind of instilling in our society is not okay. And for somebody that
And these are the consequences of just small acts of prejudice that some people might think of as harmless. Like, oh, he's just my racist uncle. But what happens when he's on a jury and,
Mhm.
that kind of thing.
similar to
Totally.
Kill a Mockingbird, which is
Yeah.
at the same time.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Oh man. So have you seen any of the remakes of this, Ryan?
No, I do want to see the 1997 version just because, I mean, the cast in that already, like, very, yeah, would draw me to watch it. I just haven't had the opportunity to, but I want to see that. I think from what I recall, there is like a Japanese remake of this as well. That I would actually love to see this with a co-ed group of people and how that dynamic would change. And I don't know if it would necessarily change. And I think something that's really cool about this film is even though it is 12 men and there are no women in the cast, it doesn't really matter because I think it is such a universal experience and people can relate to it regardless of who's in that group of people. But it would be cool, I think, to see like either 12 women or 12 men and women. And I think just to see how that dynamic would shift the interactions with the different jurors.
I think having 12 women in, Kevin, you were saying before, like a Me Too case and having one woman question some of the testimony would be a very interesting drama.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not the person to make that.
I'm not the person to make
Maybe
that,
you are.
but it would be interesting.
That's the actual thing that we discover here is that you both will make the new remake of 12 Angry
No.
Men or
Oh,
Women.
man.
No.
Oh, I will get skewered if I'm the one that writes that or directs that.
That's a topic I'd
Fair
rather write
enough.
about other things.
No.
Fair enough.
Oh,
Have either of you seen a lot of the other remakes? Because I'm curious if you had a one that
I've
you
seen the William
particularly-
Friedkin one because Friedkin is also one of my favorite directors. I think I saw the Mexican one many years ago, but I haven't seen a whole lot of the remakes. I have seen the plot line adapted into episodes of TV about 100 times.
Didn't they have a Simpsons episode with this?
Yes, it did, except Homer was just holding up the jury because he kept getting perks at the hotel. It had nothing to do with, but then in the process of doing so, they realized the guy was innocent. So he still gets the rewards of being the hero.
That's funny.
That is actually a very clever way to make it happen. Just him just being a nuisance, not even stalling the procedure because of honesty and due process, but just because Homer
He finds
being
out he has
Homer.
free room service at the
Yeah,
hotel.
he's-
this day.
He's just accidentally doing the right thing.
Oh, man.
Exactly.
I actually always felt when working on family law, I always felt they should have done a 12 Angry Men episode.
Oh yeah, that
Honestly.
would be a very cool. I mean, we're already in a law space. I mean, it wouldn't be too far off, and we never did a bottle episode in the show, so that would have been a good way to, create that sort of environment.
It could have been. Could have been.
Maybe
Oh,
season 5. If we'll see.
Season 5.
Fingers crossed.
Oh man, so Ryan, we're getting into our last 10 minutes here. So how is there anything coming up in your world now? Anything that you'd like to promote coming up on your end?
I did a Christmas movie a couple months ago, which was very fun. It was actually my very first Christmas movie, so it was cool to be able to tick that off my acting bucket list. I feel like everyone in Vancouver has been in some sort of Christmas movie in some way or another, so it was nice to be able to do that.
Are you allowed to say the title?
Oh yeah, and it's called Home Sweet Christmas Wedding. It's with Candace Cameron Bure and Cameron Matheson. Very fun role. I always give this to people who know family law, but he's kind of like the less responsible, more frantic version of Winston in many ways.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
he's a film assistant, very scatterbrained, a little obtuse, but he's a lot of fun and very lovable at the same time. But it was very fun. It was good to be able to do that. And it's funny, every time I mention to people that I've done a Christmas movie, the first thing that comes out of people's mouth is, "Oh, are you playing an elf?" And I'm like, I'll probably just give off elf vibes. But other than that, just been auditioning and doing my day job to pay the bills. And how about you guys on your end? What are you guys up to?
Oh, we're doing this podcast. We don't usually get asked what we're doing on the podcast.
No, I mean, I would love to know. I mean, this is a way for us to catch up with each other too, right? So.
This is all going to be in the episode. We
No,
just,
great.
I don't know. We optioned a script this year. We're working on, we optioned a horror comedy earlier this year that was written about in IndieWire. We
Amazing.
got, Yeah, thanks. We got other stuff we're working on, trying to make some other movies.
Yeah, we got some stuff in the pipeline, but we can't really say anything.
Yeah. Can't really.
It's all hush hush, the very secretive stuff.
For the first time in our lives, yes.
It's hush hush until it's greenlit.
Then we'll hear all about it, and we'll be promoting on all fronts.
Well, just before we kind of take off here, Ryan, I just wanted to actually just dial back onto the movie one more time here. And
Absolutely.
This is a really, really timeless premise and a really timeless movie. And one thing that blew me away when we were watching it was just how well it's aged like fine wine. There's nothing in this movie that's like, there's not even anything in this movie that's like technologically really dedicated to the era. There's no phone calls because they're in a jury room. There's no need for
very contained.
Very contained, and even in a modern day jury that would never have devices in there anyway.
Yes.
So it's kind of fascinating how it creates a time capsule that's relevant in any kind of era.
In a modern day, he'd never get the knife through because they'd have metal detectors.
Yeah, he would have to like show a photo of it or something.
Yeah, that's true. But it's like, so Ryan, you were saying that you saw this when you were in film school, when you're in Capilano. So you were at a pretty young age when you saw this. So I have to wonder, like, this took a shine to you at the time. Was it the themes, the filmmaking? You talked about the filmmaking aspect of it all, but I'm just kind of curious because this was really fascinating to watch. It was Kayla's first time seeing the original. You said you loved it.
Yeah, and I remember kind of the 1997 12 Angry Men, but yeah. I think I kind of saw it in passing with people and I didn't remember as much of it, but I actually really loved this version.
It's not a movie that you can just kind of look away from. Like, it really locks your attention in the whole 90 minutes. It's crazy how a movie of just people talking can be so bloody fascinating.
Oh, yeah. And the same as actually one of my other favorite plays, Freud's Last Session. We started watching that as well.
Yeah.
Very similar to that.
What's it called? Freud's
Last Session. It's C.S. Lewis interviewing Sigmund Freud about theology and religion and having a debate before he committed medically assisted suicide. Bombs are being dropped on London.
They made a movie about it a couple of years ago with Anthony Hopkins and Matthew Good.
Oh, good cast.
Yeah, you should check it out. But it's very similar to this sense of like, it's kind of fascinating how it takes story and it boils it right down to just the core of, here are characters discussing a problem. And it's crazy how it doesn't take any flash or anything like that to have you hooked for the entire time. And I think that's just a testament to a great script, great director, and this crop of incredible actors that managed to just all do this at the same period.
The insane focus on like dialogue on this, just dialogue carries so much of it. I mean, as well as the performances.
Of course.
But the dialogue is iconic.
And I think that's why I found it so compelling, is the simplicity of it and how much you can really accomplish in film with just well-written dialogue and good performances. I think a lot of our generation, we're so focused on a lot of bombastic elements, and our attention spans are like, very short nowadays. And I don't know, I just found it beautiful to be able to watch something so rawest form like of what film is. It's really like a one room with people talking I don't know, I was just locked in the entire time, and I honestly could watch this movie day in and day out just because there's something new. There's always something new that you could find in there.
So I want to watch it again to see what other details I pick up, because I'm sure
I'm
there's
gonna look for the jacket
on the table.
I'm gonna look for the jacket that you mentioned to see what else, like any other nuances they added in there.
Well, there you go. Ryan, I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on to our show today. It was always wonderful working with you on Family Law, and I'm so happy to be able to catch up with you on our show here.
Thank you. Likewise. I mean, honestly, it's great to be. I love talking about movies in general, so it was nice to geek out on one of my favorite movies with the both of you. And I'm really glad I got to do this, and thank you for inviting me on your show.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We'd love to have you back in the future.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Kayla.
All right. Thanks, Ryan. Hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we enjoyed making it. If you'd like to show your support, then visit martiniwindow.com and come buy us a coffee or buy yourself some merch.